What are your thoughts on open relationships?
It's definitely not something I encourage, even though I can understand why people do it, but it's not something I encourage because essentially, I always look at relationships through the lens of a child. And when you have children and both parents are in open relationships, what happens is they start to learn to put their desires before the needs of each other and the needs of the relationship. And it's just not good for creating a unit. It's not good for a part of being in a healthy relationship is sacrificing what you truly want for the sake of the commitment to this marriage. But when you are in an open relationship, you're not asking them to sacrifice anymore. And then they don't get in the habit of putting somebody else's feelings first. And it's just pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. It's just not a good way to live your life. It's not healthy for you. It's just not healthy, but I can understand
I think there's always going to be one person who will get hurt.
Yeah, because there's always one winner. There's always somebody who's actually upgraded.
The person who cares less is going to win.
Always the person who cares less is always going to be a one step ahead, and then it becomes a battle, and then it becomes a problem, and then what happens is you're trying to beat each other, and you start to be on opposite teams. Like if you went out that night, I'm going to go out this night. If you met somebody hot, I'm going to meet someone hot. It's always a negative thing. I don't know if it's very good for short term, but terrible for long term. In my experience of watching couples that do it.
Can you or should anyone ever forgive a partner who has cheated?
I think when you have children, yes. When you have children, you can do it. The reason being is children benefit from seeing mum and dad go through troubles, going through it, staying together. But forgiveness and staying are not the same thing. Staying with your partner and then punishing them and being horrible to them and controlling them and being abusive is not forgiving. Forgiving is we're going to start fresh. What made you want to cheat? Let's try and fix that. But what I noticed, especially when men forgive women, it's not always good. Because they start to lose respect for themselves. They start to think, I'm such a fucking idiot. How can I forgive her? And they get angry at themselves. And
do they end up wanting revenge?
They want revenge and they get abusive. Either physically or mentally. Where are you going? What time are you going? This, that, and the other. Calling her names, calling her this, that, and the other. Women do it too when they've been cheated on. But women tend to just withdraw their love. They no longer love you. They no longer want to sleep with you. Whereas for men, when they forgive you, they hate themselves for not being strong enough to leave you. So they end up being verbally and physically abusive because they're a less happy person. So I say if there's no kids, don't do it.
Hi guys, don't forget to join my Patreon where not only will you get exclusive information and videos every single week, but not only that, you can ask me a question anytime and there's no limit to how many questions you can ask. So to subscribe, just click the link below. Okay.
Yeah, I generally would probably not forgive.
Have you ever forgiven by it? Like, have you ever been softer and thought, let me try and forgive?
No, I mean, fortunately, I think I've been, I don't know for sure, but I feel like I've been in a position where I haven't really been cheated on.
Yeah.
But in my earlier days, in my early 20s, I think for sure it happened. Now that I look back at everything.
Yeah.
And
but you've never been in a situation where it's been outright, someone's cheated?
No, but the other person had started speaking to someone.
Okay.
So in a way, I just thought, well, it's over.
Right.
And I think if someone has cheated, it's never going to be the same again.
Yeah,
it really isn't. Like, even though you try to tell yourself as much as possible, oh yeah, we can make it work again. You're always going to think about it, and the trust is gone. And what I've noticed in a relationship, when the trust is gone, it's a mess.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you start to be mad at yourself for not being strong enough to leave them. And when you're mad at yourself, you're a difficult partner. You're angry, you're aggressive, you're hostile. You don't want to reward them. You're like, oh, why should I cook for them? Why should I give her why should I give her a birthday present? You start to withhold the good things, but really unleash all the bad things. So I think it's always a bad thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out well.
What advice would you give to somebody who's in a relationship or dating someone who has experienced severe emotional trauma, usually maybe in their childhood?
Oh, okay.
So how do you deal with that?
The thing is, when you've been traumatized in your childhood, you can't help but look for trauma in adulthood. So you'll look for somebody who will reincarnate that trauma. Somebody, say, for example, parent is abusive, you look for an abusive partner. Parent is absent, you look for an absent partner. You owe yourself the right to feel loved in the correct way. So select wisely. Selection is everything. Try not to, because what happens is when you've been traumatized, somebody who feels familiar, even though it's chaotic and horrible, you'll be drawn to them because it feels familiar. failure. And you label that as chemistry. And somebody who's nice, consistent, and caring, you see as boring. And you're like, oh, I don't want that. You owe yourself to look for peace, not pleasure. Because in the long run, that peace will give you that comfort you always craved as a child. But that chaos will rehash all the traumas and you are left feeling so low. So you owe yourself that experience of love if you didn't get it as a child. Try and think about it like that. That child that in you that's been hurt and traumatized needs love. Go to somebody who gives it, not somebody who reminds that child that they're unworthy. Because that's what the people tend to do. They reincarnate all the horrible things.
I wouldn't say I've had experience of that specifically, but I have been seeing, or I've been in a relationship with someone who had a very narcissistic mother. And that...
It's traumatizing, right?
Would you class that as being...
Absolutely. What happens in that narcissistic child is either that they become a bit narcissistic or they accept narcissism towards them. So they accept somebody who doesn't value them, makes them earn their love, really abusive, really negative, and they see that as normal. And if they get that narcissist to love them, it's almost like getting their mum to love them. So they're almost up for the challenge, but they're re-abusing themselves. So it doesn't work out, unfortunately.
Unless you're really narcissistic.
Unless you're really
narcissistic. Then it's going to be great.
Then it all works. And then it all works well, go perfectly. But it is unfortunate how you can't pick your childhood, but you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. It's unfortunate. Do you feel like you had it quite easy as a child, or like?
Well, I did up until the age of 11, and my mum died of breast cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was brought up in my teens, very confused, angry, pissed off with the world, and surrounded by a lot of, it was just masculine energy, because it was my brother, my dad, my grandparents were there, but I didn't have that mother figure.
Did your dad remarry?
He's not remarried, but he's with someone now. And she's like really nice.
Did you have a mother figure in that 11 onwards, or no? So did you become hyper independent or really clingy to people?
Hyper independent. I was, I guess I liked being by myself.
Yeah. And so now do you find it like difficult when a woman wants all your time and energy?
Yes, but I don't know if it's specifically linked to that though. I think I'm just generally quite,
Usually is. What happens with people who have that trauma, they become hyper independent. And what happens is when somebody wants a lot of their time and energy, instead of seeing it as a form of love, they see it as a form of control. They always want space. So even if they're married, a part of them wants like a separate bedroom, or even if they...
Yeah, that sounds like me.
I can almost tell you. I know what happens is when they start to get attached to somebody, as much as they want emotional intimacy, they want distance. So they get attached, spend some time together, and then be like, not ignore her text the next day. And she's like, we just had a great time. And you're like, I need space now. Like mentally you're thinking, I need distance. So what happens is they kind of intimacy, distance. And that person's like, what the hell is going on with this guy? And then they try and pull you more. And the more they try and pull you, you feel like they're strangling you.
I think definitely in my early 20s, there was the relationships that I was in. I don't think they'd come across someone like me before.
Yeah,
they found me very puzzling.
Yeah. And then sometimes you end up not cheating, but just opening doors to other women, not because you want to cheat, but you just want to create independence from your partner. You just want to create an emotional distance. So you end up just kind of talking to other women just to create that space, just so she doesn't think that she has total control over you, because you're just not used to it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so other things that they'll do is they point out flaws in their partner, not because there are flaws, but they're trying to emotionally detach. So their partner will, after being with somebody who's hyper independent, their partner's like, does he even love me? Like, I don't even know. And he's like, no, I love you lots, but I'm just guarded.
I think I found it very difficult to express emotions and communicate.
Do your partner sometimes not even know if you love them or not? They're not sure?
No, they know now.
They know
I think probably after the age of 25, I got much better at understanding women and just expressing myself. Yeah. But beforehand, I was like so cold.
Yeah, here's the tip. If you just soothe her when she's being annoying, she leaves you alone for a while. If you just reply quite quickly, she'll leave you alone for a couple of hours. But when you leave her on red and when you don't reply and you don't, that's when she starts talking to herself and going crazy. Quick tip is call her quickly, then you don't have to hear from her a couple of hours. It's just like, but men think you're trying to control me. It's not control. It's like giving a baby a dummy.